Hey, how's it going? And today I'm excited to bring you this tutorial about an introduction to AI in Unreal Engine. And today this is what we're going to be creating. If I hit play, we're going to have this randomly moving cube. But to give you the full effect, let me hit escape real fast. And what we're going to do is hit Control L and turn down the lights. Oops. I'm going to hit Control L and make it dark in here. And then I'm going to hit F11 to make a big screen, G to kill the gizmos, and Alt P to hit play, and this is what we get. I can look around. So this is what we're going to get, and this is using a behavior tree, and it's just programmed to randomly move the object along the nav mesh, and it just moves every so often. It's pretty trippy. And along the way, we'll be talking a little bit. I'll be sharing you my thoughts about AI, what I know about AI, and what I think about it. And it has incredible potential, obviously, and it's exploding right now, right? So I'm just curious how far we can go with Unreal Engine with all this. So anyway, I'm going to hit escape, and then I'll be back in just a minute to get on with this. Hey, we're back. And to get started with this, we're just going to go into the third person template, and we're just going to call this AI_2 and no starter content. And it just takes a minute. One thing I wanted to mention about behavior trees and all this, you'll see as we go through this, there's a lot of assets that are involved in doing this. But one thing I wanted to talk about real briefly is there's a behavior tree, which is just what you would imagine it to be. It's a tree of behaviors, a hierarchy of behaviors. You can think of it as a dynamic, nested, if-else statement based on positive reinforcement. So I don't know if you saw that movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, but there's a scene in there where he keeps reliving the same day and he's trying to pick up on this girl and he keeps reliving the same day. He meets with success, but he keeps failing too. You see, he keeps coming back and trying different things until he starts succeeding. And then when he succeeds, he ends up winning the girl after doing it over and over again. That's exactly what AI is. It's a group of logic, if-else statements, and an algorithm that doesn't stop. It's success driven, and it doesn't stop until it gets its goal. Just like the Terminator. So it can have good goals and bad goals. And that's the exact same thing. But here, notice it says, the behavior tree relies on another asset called a Blackboard, which serves as the brain for the behavior tree. So those two things go together. The behavior tree is like the decision hierarchy, and the Blackboard stores all the data. So those things really together form the brain of the AI. So anyway, here we are. So the first thing we got to do to get started with this is we need to create what's called a nav mesh, because that's what the AI uses to navigate on. Now, I did get an error on this, and I'll show you that toward the end if I hit it. But because we're in this level that's not a persistent level, the nav mesh might unload. And if it unloads, this will not work, and I'll get an error. It won't work, and I'll think something's wrong with the behavior tree. It's nothing really wrong with the behavior tree. It's just that Unreal unloaded the nav mesh. So you'll see what I mean in just a minute. Well, toward the end. So the first thing we got to do is get that nav mesh, though. So we get our nav mesh, and it's right here. We can just drag it into the center of the scene. We can hit the space bar and stretch it. Whoop, that's not it. Nav mesh. I'm already off to a rocky start. Where did it go? Nav mesh. There it is. Okay. I don't know how I didn't grab it. Okay. So sometimes these controls can be a little finicky, and we can just encompass the whole volume. And if I hit P, you should be able to see it. See it? Everything turns green. That's everywhere the AI can go, pretty much. So, although it'll probably stick to the main floor and won't be able to get up there. So I'll just hit P to get out of that. So that's basically step one. Now the next thing we need to do is create a pawn with movement. And in Unreal, that's known as a character. So a character is basically a pawn. What's a pawn? A pawn is something that can be possessed by a controller, either a player controller or an AI controller. AI controller is not really the brains. It's just responsible for possessing and controlling the movements of the pawn. So anyway, it's the behavior tree and the Blackboard that are really the brain of the AI. So what we're going to do here is we're going to right click and we're going to go to blueprint class, and you'll see character, and it tells you what everything is right here. See, a character is a type of pawn that includes the ability to walk around, and a pawn that can be possessed and received input from a controller. So it's all right here. I'm going to call everything with a prefix of my, and the reason why is there's just too much stuff in here. You'll see as we get going on this that it just gets confusing to know what I created and what's already there. So it's just easier if I call everything my for this particular tutorial. So now we're going to right click into this, double click I mean, and we need a couple things. So we've got a mesh here, but there's really nothing in it, and it's looking for a skeletal mesh, but fortunately we have a cube right here. So we're just going to select that cube, and that'll be that there. And just for fun, let's go ahead and add a point light so we can see it move around at night. I think that's a lot of fun. And make sure the point light is set to movable. And then we can change the color. Let's change it to red. So we'll just turn on the green and the blue. So we have a nice cool red, and we can jack up the intensity and the attenuation radius of it. And then we can drag it up here on top of the cube and make it almost look like the cube is glowing. So we can compile and save that. Now, if we search here right now, if we click up here on the top and we come up here and I search for pawn, you'll see that it's controlled by an AI controller right now. We want to create our own AI controller for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here. We're going to right click. We're going to go to blueprint class, but we're going to go to all classes, and we're going to search for AI controller. And we're going to make our own AI controller right there and select that. And I'm going to call this my. We won't even be needing to go back to this. This is it's all set up already for us, but we have to create it. You'll see in a minute. So that's my AI controller, and we can go save all. And now if we click back in here and it go back to pawn, you'll see I have it right here, and now we can switch it there. And believe it or not, that's all we have to do in here for these. We'll be back one more time to do something here when we go to control this. So we've got our AI controller, we've got our pawn, we got our nav mesh, so we can go ahead and just drag our AI on there. I'm going to hit the space bar because I don't like those controls, those scale controls on there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and make a behavior tree. And like I said, this is the decision hierarchy that we set up. There are our algorithms, our dynamically nested if-else statements and conditions. So right click, go to AI, and go to behavior tree, and we're going to call this my underscore behavior tree, and we'll double click into it. And that's what I mean about dynamically nested, because this basically we can pull off of here, and we have all these things. We have what's called a selector, and then we can just start asking it to do things. So just for example, if I pull off of here, you'll see there's tasks, and these are all built-in tasks that we can make the control our pawn to do. And there's like wait, and there's all this play sound. So that's kind of a fun one. So let's go to play sound. And if we just come over here, there's all these kind of built-in sounds. They're all fairly annoying. I'm trying to find one that's not too bad. Maybe I'll try that one. I haven't listened to them all. But how this would work right now, since that's the only thing in here, if we activate our AI, it's just going to play that sound because that's all it's been told to do. And then once it succeeds in doing something, it usually stops. It'll stop if it's told that it's successful, and if it fails, then it'll move on to the next series of things to do. So that's the thing that I'm saying. If it's rewarded and it hits its goal, then it stops. If it's not rewarded, then it moves on to the next thing. And that's how it gets smarter, is it just keeps cycling through different things until it becomes successful. It's just constant repetition until it gets its goal. So the only thing we have to do, what's interesting now, is we want this to play that sound now. We want to activate our behavior tree. So one way we can do this is by creating what's called an actor component. And so what we're going to do is we're going to right click or go to back to Blueprint class, and there's this one called actor component. And you'll see what it says right here is a reusable component that can be added to any actor. So we're going to add this to our AI character. So this actor component, because it's reusable, it's going to have the scripting in it to activate our artificial intelligence. So click on it, and yes, we're going to call this my actor component. Once it's created, I'm going to go click here and save all. So we save it. Now that that's been created, we can click in my AI character, come up here to add, and now it's available. You'll see it right there. So basically, once it's in here, once it's been added in here, then this pawn has access to whatever code is in here. So we don't have to put the code in here, we can put the code in here. This code can then be placed in other actors as much as we need it. So it's a way to reuse our code and not have to keep rewriting it. So if we double click in here, now we got to think about the logic of this. We want this to begin on event play. And what do we want it to do? We're like a child searching for our parents in a way. Well, we want to get our parent, we want to find our parent. So here it's not called parent, but it's called get owner. So we want to get the owner of our component, and that's going to be our AI pawn. And then we want to get the AI controller of that pawn, so get AI controller of that pawn. And then from here, once we got that, we want to run our behavior tree right here. And our asset is going to be my behavior tree. And then this here needs to be upgraded to a variable so that we have a reference to it. We can make it public if we want. And you'll see by default value is set to my behavior tree as well. So now with this connection made, with this component included in this, and the code to run the behavior tree in here, what should happen is I'll hear whatever sound we connected over here. Whatever sound that is, we should hear it when I hit play. I might have to take my headphones off. It's bad. Okay, all right. So that's not a bad sound because it tells you something sounds horribly wrong. So that's good news in a way because we know we're on the right track and everything's working. And believe it or not, we're about halfway done. So we've got our behavior tree, we have our AI controller, we've got our AI pawn, we have a component running the code that runs our behavior tree. And now what we want to do is program it to move around randomly. So let's go back into our behavior tree to look at that. Here we are in our behavior tree. And you can think of this as, this could be any number of trees or branches. It can branch off, different branches. And it goes from left to right. So here, you can think of this as our first branch we made. So now we're making another branch, but this is going to become our new branch. So we're going to go sequence. And so this is our first branch here. This is our second branch here. So the way it works is it's going to run this branch. If it's successful, then it stops. If it runs this and that's not successful, then it's going to go to the next branch. So hopefully we don't have to hear that sound again. So if we hear that sound again, we know whatever we programmed here didn't work. So this is just what it says. This is sequence. We can click here and drag off, and we can go to tasks, and we're going to get wait. We'll have it wait for 5 seconds. We're going to drag off, get another task, and we're going to have it move to a new location. And then the next thing we got to do is have it find a random location to move to. So if I drag off here and I look for task, well, I have a bunch of tasks already built in, but I don't have find random location. If there was one already, I could just plug that in and we'd almost be done. But because we don't have that task here, we have to create it. We have to make a task or a new task. So there's a tab right here that says new task, and I'm going to click on it. And I'm going to call it my _ new task, and I'm just going to call it random, and I'll go save. And then it pops us into this new window right here. And in here, there's some logic that we have to program into it. So this is going to be triggered by the behavior tree. So because Now if we come back in here and I drag off because I just created this new task, if I come over here and go task, you'll see it right there, my new task, random. Right, so how it's going to work, it's going to start, it's going to come here, here, here. If this all succeeds, it's done, and we don't hear that horrendous sound. If this fails, that for any reason, and this doesn't implement, then we hear that horrendous sound. So we don't want this to fail. So now to get back to our task, we can click this tab up here or just double click right here. And this is going to be fired. This right here is going to fire off an event signal. So it's going to send out a message to here saying fire off. So we're going to go event receive execute AI. So this is going to receive that message from this tree. This is going to come to here, say start, do your thing, get me a random location. And so to do that, the first thing we got to do, it's going to be near our pawn. So we're going to go get actor location right here. And this is one good thing about a game engine. It has because it has AI with zombies chasing people already. It already knows to do that kind of stuff. So we're going to go, it knows to help us out with that already. So there's already a node called get random reachable point location right here. So radius, right? So it already knows that's going to help us. So we don't even have to do all that programming. We're going to right click on this and promote that to a variable. We'll leave it called radius. We'll compile and save it. And for a default value, we'll just go ahead and put 1400 in here. Okay, and that's all we have to do for that. Now we need to stop for a moment here because we actually need to store this random location in our Blackboard. So here we go back, we'll compile and save that. So we need to create a Blackboard. So I talked earlier in the beginning about this being the decision hierarchy tree, and then but it doesn't store any values in it. So what we have to do is create a Blackboard to store its values in it. So it's like the memory. And we'll go artificial intelligence, Blackboard here. And I'm just going to call this my Blackboard. And this is going to store the values that our decision tree, our behavior tree will be running off of. And what values are those? Well, I can go ahead and create it right now. It's going to be a vector location. So that's a vector, which is X, Y, and Z for your position. And I'm just going to call this my location data. Okay, and we can save that. And so if you're familiar with Unreal Engine, they have data structures in it already, and they have one called a structure. And all a structure does is hold variables and data. And that's all really a Blackboard's doing. It's just holding data that the decision tree acts upon. But right now, these two things aren't connected. You see how that's disconnected from the behavior tree? So if we come into my behavior tree over here, and we come up here on, it says, not tasks, we got to come up here on the root, and it says AI Blackboard. It wants to know where's my memory at. And the memory is right there in my Blackboard. So see how it all connects now? So we go save. So now this decision tree is connected to this Blackboard, which is just holding data. So this is the decision tree, and that's the data. And actually, we don't even need this window, this tab open anymore, because we can get to the Blackboard from here. But actually, we don't even need to go back to the Blackboard. So we are good here. Now that we have that linkage and that variable created, we can come back to our do task here. And we want to send this data to our Blackboard. So our location. So there's actually a node already set up for that, and it's set Blackboard value as vector, and there is that, and this gets plugged into here, and then we have to. This key is where the data is going to be. This becomes important because this is where basically the values, that data is going to be held and transferred. So we have to promote this to a variable. So we'll promote this to a variable, and we'll call this BB data out. We'll just call it BB data. We know that that's what it is. Okay. And of course, you might want to name these more specifically as your projects get more complicated. Now, the last piece of this, and this is very important, is I mentioned earlier that all of AI is based on positive reinforcement and success. And so for this to work into the system, there's a node called finish execute. And this basically tells our AI if we've been successful. So ideally, we would program in some logic here to notify that, hey, we've been successful in our location, but we're just going to assume that it's successful. So we're just going to check that as successful. So, but that's really the key to the whole thing, this success. It's driven all off of success. So we'll compile and save that. And we are on the home stretch right now. We just have to provide some linkage to this data that we've stored in the Blackboard. So to do that, we got to go back to our behavior tree. We're going to click here, and it'll have our data here. So let me see. Did I compile and save that? Description node. I feel like I'm missing something here. So this one. This Blackboard key gets sent to my location data. And this one, I thought there's supposed to be a node here. Let me see. Where is it? Go back here. Did I compile and save this? Oh, I didn't set this as public. That was my mistake. Sorry about that. This needs to be set to public. So that's why I couldn't see it over here. So now you see where it says BB data. So this has got to be switched to my location data. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so now we're all hooked up. And as far as I know, everything should work. Now here's where I ran into an error and a problem. So if I come in here and I hit play, I have a feeling we're going to hear that sound. So let's see. So you would think that I've done something wrong, but let me show you what happened. And this is what's freaking me out. Because we're in this world partition world here, it's unloaded the nav mesh. See that? You see where the nav mesh has been unloaded? And so it's saying that the AI can't move, and so it's failing. So what we have to do is go into world settings here, and I'll search for streaming. And I'm going to go enable streaming. Yes. No. And then I have to disable it again. Now watch the question I get. You are about to disable streaming. All actors in the world will be loaded. Continue. Yes. And that includes the nav mesh. So I'll go yes. Now if I hit play, it should work. See? There it goes. See it moving around? It waits. And then it goes on to the next location. Cool, huh? So, and like I said in the beginning, you can turn the lights off, but it worked. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful. I realize this was a little bit longer than I thought it might be, but as you can see, there's a lot of steps involved, and I hope you found it helpful. So take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.